Hey book nerds, it's Sarah and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I'm going to be showing you guys a very tentative fall TBR. I have stopped setting myself monthly TBRs because of like my recent slumps and everything, so I'm really going by mood reading. So the books that I'm going to be showing you in this video are just books that I would like to read in the coming months. Also, after I show you guys the few books that I would hope to read this fall, I'm going to pick out maybe 2 or 3 books from my new TBR jar that I made. If you guys want to see how I made this and all of that good stuff, I will leave the video in the suggestions right up top. So this is going to be the first time that I'm going to be using my TBR jar and I'm very excited. I hope that I get some good picks. Very nervous because I have so many different genres in here, and obviously since it's the fall season I really want to prioritize spooky books, cozy books, witchy books, dark academia, and all of that good stuff. So without further ado, I'm going to show you guys a couple of the books that I would like to read this fall. So the first one that I have here is Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong. If you guys have watched my previous reading vlogs, you guys know that I am currently like halfway through these Violent Delights and I'm very much enjoying it. So this book is on my TBR because I want to finish the duology, especially since Chloe Gong has a book coming out this fall. So I really just want to experience more of her writing and see like how she closes up a duology and all of that before I pick that one up. So this is the first book on my fall TBR. The next book that I have here is Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. So I showed you guys this book in my recent video where I went book shopping and then did a book haul. So this is a book with a non-linear time frame. We have a mother who sees her 17-year-old son murder someone right in front of her, and the day is going to repeat itself until she can stop the murder. So the tagline on the front says, "How do you stop a murder after it's already happened?" Like I said in that video, this book reminds me a lot of The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which is one of my favorite books of all time. So I'm very excited to read this and I hope it gives me the same vibes and the same feelings. Up next, I have If We Were Villains by Amel Rio. So this is a dark academia. My book bestie Amira told me that I absolutely have to read this. So this book takes place in like a school for acting, so like an arts academy. And on opening night of the play that they've been working on, I think one of them ends up dead or another student ends up dead. And at the beginning of the book, one of our characters has been released from jail and the detective who worked the case comes to see him to try and figure out the truth. With the way the synopsis is written, I am assuming that we're going to have dual timelines in here. So one perspective from the past and one perspective from the present. So I am very excited to read this. I have had this for, I think, a year now. I think I got this for my birthday last year and I've been meaning to read it ever since, haven't gotten around to it, and I finally think it's time for me to read this. The next book I have here I'm very nervous about, but I really do want to read it, and that book is Bunny by Mona Awad. So I have heard that this book kind of has the same vibes as Catherine House, and I didn't really enjoy that book. I mean, it was fine, but I wanted more out of it. So this book apparently is just as weird. It's going to play with my mind, and I'm not quite sure how to describe this book, but I feel like most of you out there know about the existence of this book by now. It's a short book. It's just over 300 pages, and I am hoping that I'm going to like this. This is actually a favorite book of, I think, a lot of the regular booktubers that I watch. So like Kayla from Books and Lala, Olivia from Olivia Reads a Latte, and I think also Chloe from Books with Chloe. I'm very nervous to read this because I'm hoping that I'm going to enjoy it, but if it's like Catherine House, I probably won't. But I'm going to try and go into this with an open mind, and I will definitely vlog the experience, so stay tuned for that in a future reading vlog. The next book that I have here, I am very excited to read because I have heard so many good things about it, and that book is The Gray Seer by Kim Liggett. So this book is kind of like, I think it's some kind of magical realism cannibalism, where on the 16th birthday of the girls in this society, they are banished to get purified for marriage, and that banishment is called the grace year. Some people return, other girls don't, and they die during their banishment, I am assuming. So this feels very speculative, very kind of dystopian, I would like to say as well. Sometimes some of these books that have like speculative elements are always mixed with another genre, so it can be very complicated to kind of describe the book or place it in like one genre category. But this is one of the books that's like at the top of my TBR for the fall. I'm probably going to read this very soon, probably after I finish These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends, so I'm very excited to read this as well. The next book that I have here is The It Girl by Ruth Ware. So this is Ruth Ware's most recent release, and it takes place in dual timelines once again, as most of Ruth Ware's books do, I think. So in this book we follow two girls who become friends when they go at Oxford, and one of those two girls ends up dead, and then we skip forward a decade later, and the girl who survived is trying to put the past behind her, but then one day a journalist comes knocking on her door with new evidence that suggests that the person who killed April, which is the girl who was murdered, may actually be innocent, and that kind of flips our other main character's whole world upside down, because she was really trying to put all of this behind her and move on, but now all of those old memories resurface. She gets put into contact with old friends from their university days, and it's just a story about finding out the truth of what happened in her younger days. I feel like I'm saying this a lot, but I'm very excited for this, and this is also at the top of like my priority for my fall TBR. So the next book that I have here is another book that I'm very excited to read, and it's also another book that Amira desperately wants me to read soon, and that is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. So this is the first book in a duology where we have two college or university roommates who are very into like academic research, and their research kind of pushes them towards the realization that when people are put under very specific circumstances, they can develop extraordinary abilities, and they decide to test this out for themselves, and I'm pretty sure that it goes wrong, and this duology follows their experience with all of that. So that sounds like something that can be at the same time like very interesting, very funny, and also some dark academia / spooky vibes. So I'm very much looking forward to this. I love V.E. Schwab's writing, and I haven't read anything by her since I finished the City of Ghosts trilogy, which I absolutely loved, and that was a middle grade. They're very short, and the writing is really nice and beautiful, and it's super entertaining. And since then I have been dying to read something else by her, so I'm very excited to pick this up soon. The last book that I have to show you before I pick out 2 or 3 books from my TBR jar is a very, very old book. But the reason it's on my TBR is because it's about vampires, and it's a very long series that I have never finished, and it's one of the book series that got me into reading, and I'm kind of in this era where I am rereading the favorite books of mine that got me into reading in the first place. So that book is Marked by Kristen Cast and PC Cast. So this book, or this series rather, follows Zoe Redbird and her cast of friends who are all very, very gifted in elemental magic, and the vampires in this series all have some sort of ability where they can touch one of the elements and use elemental magic. But our main character ends up being able to connect with all of the elements, so she is set to become one of the most powerful vampires their society has ever seen. So at the beginning of this book, our main character gets an outline of a crescent moon on her forehead, and in this world that means that they have turned into a vampire, or that they are going to undergo a change to become a vampire. And once that crescent moon appears, they are sent to a house of Night, which is a school for vampire teens where they learn all about the history of their culture, of their species, and they learn all about magic and all about how to be a vampire basically. And when Zoe goes to that school, she feels like she's at home and she makes a lot of new friends, and it's just so fun. I'm really excited to reread this because, like I said, I have been wanting to go back to my roots as a reader, and this book series is one of the first ones that got me into reading. It's funny, it's fun, it has romance in it. Some of the writing is a little bit cringe, but that's just because it's been released for so long. And some of the romance in here, like sometimes there are a lot of like love triangles or like love squares, and it's just like, okay, but why? So that's stuff that I ignore, but for the most part, this is very fun, very entertaining, and I really did enjoy it. This series has, I think, 12 books in it, but I have never reached the end of the series. I think the farthest that I've reached was book 8 or 9. So maybe within the next few months slash going into the new year, I will be able to finally finish this series and mark that off my to-do list. So those were just a few of the books that I would like to read this fall. Like I mentioned, this is a very tentative TBR and I'm going to prioritize mood reading, but these are some of the books that I would really like to get to. And now that I've showed them to you, I can finally pick out 2 or 3 books from my TBR jar, which I'm super excited to do. I'm really excited to use this for the first time. So I'm going to unscrew the top and I'm going to mix up the titles. Oh geez, it's falling everywhere. But I'm going to mix the, oh my god, this is falling everywhere. So I'm going to mix this up as best as I can. Okay, so let's pick out the first one. Okay, so the first one that I picked out is Where Dreams Descend. So the first book that I picked out of my TBR jar is Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angelis, and this book is kind of like the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber, where it's set in a circus and there's a lot of magic involved, and this is a fantasy obviously, and I'm very excited to have picked this because, like I mentioned in a previous reading vlog, I haven't read much fantasy in the previous months, so I'm very excited to kind of get back into fantasy. So far so good. The TBR jar is in my favor. Let's pick out the second one. Alright, so for book number 2, okay, so for book number 2, I have picked out Renegades by Marissa Meyer. So the second book that the TBR jar has picked out for me is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. So this is a sci-fi dystopian. So I'm just reading the back cover of this because I know like the general idea of this book, but I don't really know what the synopsis is. So instead of trying to explain it to you, I'm just going to read off the back. So it says, secret identities, extraordinary powers, she wants vengeance, he wants justice. The Renegades are a syndicate of prodigies, humans with extraordinary abilities who emerge from the ruins of a crumbled society and established peace and order where chaos reigned. As champions of justice, they remain a symbol of hope and courage to everyone except the villains they once overthrew. Nova has a reason to hate the Renegades, and she is on a mission for vengeance. As she gets closer to her target, she meets Adrian, a renegade boy who believes in justice and in Nova. But Nova's allegiance is to a villain who has the power to end them both. So this is, like I said, some kind of sci-fi dystopian, and it has romance in it, and I am very excited to read this. I recently acquired all 3 of the books in this trilogy, so I'm very excited to branch out in the genres that I'm reading and read something that's like more sci-fi dystopian, which I haven't read since I think a year or 2. So this is the second book that the TBR jar has picked out for me, and so far it's doing a pretty good job. So I'm going to pick out one more from the TBR jar, and I'm hoping we're going to end on a high note. So far the TBR jar has been in my favor, but we shall see. Okay, so I just picked the third book, but this is a book that is already on my TBR that I have just talked to you guys about. It's marked by PC Cast and Kristen Cast, so I'm going to pick out another book from here. Alright, so we're ending on a high note. The last book that I picked out from my TBR jar is All of Us Villains. Oh geez, is it going to focus? There we go. So the last book that I picked out is All of Us Villains by Amanda Foody, and I cannot remember the second author's name, but I'm going to go get the book off of my shelves so I can talk to you guys about it a little bit more. Alright, so book number 3 that my TBR jar has picked out for me is All of Us Villains by Amanda Foody, and the second author is Christine Lynn Herman. So in my previous video where I hauled the second book, All of Our Demise, I described this duology as dark academia, and oh my god, I was so wrong. I just read the synopsis and it's more of like a magical dystopian instead. So this book has the same vibes as The Hunger Games. We have a deadly game where people from different societies gather and there is a prize, and that prize is access to like a very powerful reserve of magic. So I'm assuming that we follow the characters during this game and this competition. So I just read the whole synopsis, and there's like another element in here that tells me that it's probably going to be very interesting because our participants in this competition find a book detailing the whole entire game. So they have access to all of the information regarding the games, and then they can plan strategies to beat the games, but they're going to come face to face with the choice of either using that information to participate in the games, or they can use it to rewrite the legacy, the synopsis says. So as I mentioned, it's giving me major Hunger Games vibes, but more important than that, it's giving me Catching Fire vibes, where we have this storyline of kind of unraveling and beating something that has been long since set in motion. So I feel like this could be very interesting. As I mentioned in the previous book vlog where I talked about this in the second book, I feel like the reviews of this are very, very mixed. It's 50-50. People love it, people dislike it. I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy this, and I'm hoping that I will. But like I said, with all of the previous books, you guys will definitely see like my thoughts in a reading vlog in the coming weeks. Okay, so my camera battery is flashing at me. I'm going to hurry up and conclude this video. So these are all of the books that I am hoping to read this season, including some thrillers, some sci-fi, some fantasy, some dystopian. So I have a very wide array of genres for this fall, which is something that I'm very happy about because I really want to diversify my reading a little bit more. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Let me know in the comments down below what books are on your fall TBR. I would be very curious to know. If you guys enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you never miss a future upload of mine. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye, book nerds!